You're listening to the number one source for political, pop culture, and sports talk on the radio. The Julio Rivera Show. Hashtag ConservARican. With no fuck left to give.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, hit it!
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Julio Rivera Show is on.
And popping back for the first time in 2 weeks. My name is Julio Rivera. And in 2 more weeks, we'll be at Americans for Prosperity in Orlando, Florida, hanging out at the Koch brothers event. And what will they have to say before this national election is over? They made a pledge to give over $900 million to Republican candidates. They didn't support Rand Paul. They didn't support Ted Cruz. Are they going to take it home now for Mr. Trump, who's getting a lot of his own publicity just by being Mr. Trump? Let's face it, it's not going away. Every day he's having a rally. He's having a press conference. What is Hillary Clinton doing? Hillary Clinton is hiding. She doesn't want to be around. She doesn't want to make a statement. The last time she came out, or one of the last times she came out, she said that she was going to raise taxes on the middle class. She said in 2014 that the private sector does not create jobs. The media is in the tank for Hillary Clinton, and we have a spectacular show this evening. Joining us tonight, a respected economist, and he has a lot of opinions on the differences between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's economy, Trumponomics, and his name is Steve Beaman. He will be joining us. My nephew, I guess if you want to call him that, Austin Graham, the Bernie Sanders supporter, a young college millennial type of guy that hates Hillary Clinton, and he will enforce the message from the perspective of a left-leaner. And joining us, first of all, this guy is like one of my main inspirations. He's like an idol to me. He's a Mets fan. He's a Trumper. He's a conservative. And he's a great American. He's the host of the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax TV, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on DirecTV 366 and Fios 115. His name is Steve Malzberg. And how are you this evening, Steve?
My friend, my frequent guest and my friend, it's a pleasure and an honor to join you. I know we're not talking Mets tonight, but we're talking something more important, believe it or not, Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is actually pretty crazy, and like the media is trying to create this impression that he's so down in the polls, and they're attacking Paul Manafort. They're attacking the campaign strategy. They're all over the place, but there was some information that came out that was a little bit underreported recently. Reuters, which is, I guess, respected worldwide regarding their opinion on the American presidential race, were found to actually have cooked their numbers in the actual polling. They changed the poll results for weeks leading up to the supposed bump from the Democratic National Convention. Let me ask you a question, right? And you have a lot of experience. You know what's going on. You're in the game. Is Donald Trump peaking, or is he falling behind?
Well, I mean, he's behind. He gave a speech tonight in North Carolina, and maybe we're seeing some of the effects of, Kellyanne Conway's female touch here. He admitted tonight to the crowd in Charlotte, North Carolina, that he regrets some of the things he said. He said, sometimes you say things, you say them the wrong way. He said, I've done that. and I regret it. And so that's a big step forward for him. And if he could clean up his act going forward, but there's no doubt he's behind. I mean, he had a big convention bump, and then the media went into full protect Hillary mode at all costs, and the Gold Star Father Khan and all that crap that's been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It's just ridiculous. So he's had to persevere through all of that. Now, they'll have you believe that he's down by 15 points, blah, 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 this state, that state, every other state, battleground state. But when you look at, two national polls came out today. Rasmussen poll down by 2. Zogby poll down by 2. And I'm trying to think as I say it, because we talked about it with Roger Stone tonight on the air, another poll where he was down by 4. And so he's closing the gap. It's going to be close. But the poll you talked about, the Reuters poll, and some others. The Reuters poll, Pat Caddell was the first to expose that. He was a Clinton pollster, Democratic pollster, and he is just outraged at what they're trying to pull, specifically with that Reuters poll, that they changed the question, they eliminated one of the options, and plus they overstacked everything, as many polls have been, overstacked, overrepresented with Democrats. They go out and they ask, 45% Democrats and 30% Republicans and the rest independents. Well, where do you get that disparity? That's not the population. So sure, the polls are going to be slanted towards Hillary. So the whole system is rigged. The media, just like the media is rigged, and we're in a war against the media. I'm in the media, but I'm not in the mainstream. They are lying, they are protecting, they are shushing, they are ignoring, and all they care about is that Trump blow his nose correctly after he sneezed. And that's all they care about. So the media is in a war to protect Hillary. I believe that the polls are being stacked in a war to protect Hillary. And plus, in the polls, Julio, you got people who, when they're called, are afraid to say Donald Trump because, hey, somebody's on the phone with me. They know who I am. They have my number. I better not say Trump. So that's another factor that you got to look at. So I think going forward, I'm happy to hear Donald say he made mistakes today. It humanizes him. And going forward, he's got the debates. He's got all his ads. He doesn't run any ads, nothing. And so he's got a long way to go, and I think he could turn this around.
Okay, well, one of the things that you pointed out recently on an appearance with CNN is that the media, to a certain extent, has been against Donald Trump unfairly. It's very partisan. It's almost like they built him up, and now they've decided to, pick apart every statement that he makes. Like the situation with the baby was ridiculous. The Second Amendment reference was ridiculous. We know that he didn't mean what the mainstream media is perceiving him to have supposedly tried to express when he made those statements. Right. So do you think at this point it's almost like Wasserman Schultz, the mainstream media? Is it truly completely rigged, and does that translate towards the people, or are they just trying to influence the people to vote against him when they're really for him?
Yeah, they're trying. There's a video out there that I didn't realize I was a part of until Hannity played it on his show the other night, and I was that popped up my appearance about several months ago with Carol Costello, where I tried to bring up the fact that Hillary represented a pedophile, a child rapist, when she was a young lawyer.
I remember that. I was on your show, and we talked about it for
you were on that night, and then laughed about it in a phone conversation, which is now on tape, and bragged about getting this guy off. And the girl at the time is now a woman, and says Hillary ruined my life. Anyway, I tried to bring that up on the air, and Carol Costello said, "Oh, no. Okay, we got to go." And I'm just one example. There's a 9-minute video of stuff like that CNN and MSNBC have pulled. So you're referring to the fact that I was on with Reliable Sources and Brian Stelter on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And for instance, they're talking about this assassination garbage that Trump allegedly, with the Second Amendment, he was trying to get someone to commit violence against Hillary. And I said, that's ridiculous. I said, when you had Hillary in 2008, when she was running against Obama, they asked her, because she was way behind, why don't you get out of the race? And she literally said, and I played this on my show, she literally said in '08, well, in June of when Bobby Kennedy was running, he got assassinated. In other words, I got to stay in because Barack Obama might get assassinated. Nobody cared. Nobody said boo. The media couldn't care less. Blah, blah, blah. Trump makes a statement that they want to interpret as being for violence, and that's all they talk about for 2 weeks. And Brian Stelter said to me, well, that was obviously different. There's no comparison. I said, yeah, you're right. There's no comparison. What Hillary said was worse. But they don't get it. They don't see it. And if they do, they won't admit it.
Oh, my God. And there's another thing that I wanted to touch on, because you are Jewish, and we have a big problem right now in the Middle East. It is out of control. The United States government and our foreign policy under Hillary Rotten Clinton and under John Kerry, led by Barack Obama, has made deals with Arab countries that are funding terrorism against Israel. I had a situation today where I happened to see a post by Ben Shapiro, who I'm a fan of. I actually do like Ben Shapiro a lot. But he was hitting Trump, and he is a Jewish American. How could people continue this anti-Trump rhetoric knowing what the alternative is? I mean, I am like really shocked. Like, and this is one example. Wendy Sherman, who was the lead negotiator with the 2015 Iran deal, which was actually kind of orchestrated by John Kerry and Obama, but she was put into her position by Hillary Clinton. This is the number one state sponsor of terrorism. This is the country that wants to annihilate Israel from the map. What possible reason do any American Jewish people have to possibly be a part of this misled Stop Trump movement that we keep seeing on social media and in the alternative right media?
I wish I could tell you. I mean, as an American, I'm scared to death for my kid and your kid that not only is Hillary going to eviscerate the Second Amendment with the Supreme Court nominee she's going to put on there, but the First Amendment is going to go bye-bye as we know it. There's going to be hate speech like there is in London, like there is in Europe, like there is in Canada. If you say something about radical Islam, you could go to jail or be fined. So that's the First Amendment's going to go away too. But specifically as it relates to Israel, that Iran deal. I mean, the leader of Hamas and Hezbollah just said the other day that, yeah, Iran funds us. Everybody knows Iran funds them, and they attack Israel. So you're absolutely right. Why do Jews continue to vote Democrat? Why do Jews continue if Barack Obama ran again, even though he's stuck his finger in the eye of Israel? Why would they vote for him again? I don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you, it's the same thing almost as why do blacks keep voting for Democrats? Look how they've suffered under Obama, and look how they've suffered under Democratic policies in city after city for decades. And yet, overwhelmingly, they'll pull that lever for Hillary and for the next Democratic councilman and alderman and mayor and dog catcher. Doesn't matter. So I don't know. Exactly.
It's crazy. In the last 50 years, since the invention of the supposed Great Society by Lyndon Baines Johnson, these democratic, big liberal cities in the inner cities have become welfare farms that have economically enslaved minorities. And it is absolutely out of control. And I actually, because listen, I grew up in Patterson. You're from Brooklyn, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're a Brooklyn guy. I've watched it my entire life, and I don't understand why people can't see it other than the fact that they've groomed minorities to sit there and run for office. You have the Cory Bookers, you have the Joey Torreses in Patterson that are Puerto Rican, that they're black, and they sit there and they manipulate these people into voting for them. And they're voting against their interest. And then they have the nerve to try to bully, to try to shame conservative blacks, conservative Puerto Ricans, conservative Jews, into thinking that they're voting against their interests when they vote conservative. What happened to freedom being the benchmark by which we live in? What did the founders die for when they were fighting tyranny?
Yeah, well, that's a great point. Great point. And I got to tell you, we're in such big trouble because we have to turn this election around because, like I said, the country as we know it is over. You know, there was a poll that just came out today that Trump tweeted out tonight that shows that a majority, 60%, basically 60, 62, whatever, and of the overall population and immigrants who came here legally, all kinds of immigrants, over 60% of them favor what Trump was talking about the other day, halting immigration from countries that are victimized by terror, taking a deep breath, fixing the system. These are immigrants. Mm-hmm. And non-immigrants, Americans. So you would think by the media that, oh my God, anybody who believes what Trump is saying, you're a xenophobe and a thisophobe and a thatophobe. Over 60% of immigrants themselves agree with Trump. That's how out of touch the media is. But I'm telling you, we are in real trouble if she wins. I mean, real trouble.
Yeah.
And, for your daughter, my son, they're going to grow up in a country where they can't even speak or write like we are able to do right now. And our profession is going to go down the tubes because they're going to come after us. Mm-hmm. They're going to come after us. It's going to be hate speech. I'm telling you. Sonia Sotomayor and three more like her are going to determine that, oh, you can't say that. It offends somebody. And we're doomed.
Yeah, and then you have net neutrality, and God knows what's inside that. That was put together and written by unelected bureaucrats that were appointed by the Obama administration. We've already seen on Facebook how conservative speech has been stifled. We're not going to get past this. We have to elect Trump. Is he the perfect conservative? Of course not. I mean, we had this conversation 100 times. But the fact of the matter is, I am 100% behind someone that will halt a State Department that's going to make deals with countries that are against American interests, that are pro-Sharia. The Attorney General's position, which has allowed Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama to operate lawlessly. All these things are part of the administration. We're not electing a king. We're electing a Republican president and a pro-American president. Get on the Trump train. What do you say, Steve?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Hillary has already said, you know, that unconstitutional order on immigration that two courts found unconstitutional and the Supreme Court split on it, so it remains unconstitutional. Hillary has said she would go further. She said that didn't go far enough. She will use her pen, and guess what? If she gets to appoint two more Supreme Court justices, they'll say everything she does is constitutional. We will be electing a king.
Exactly. She wants to go against the Heller decision. She wants to go against the Heller decision. She's dead set against the Second Amendment. This is going to be statism and extreme tyranny on American soil for the first time in 240 years. This is what we're looking at.
That, combined with the fact that it doesn't look like the Mets are going to make the playoffs, could be a very depressing winter.
It will most certainly be.
If Hillary wins.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. I love you so much. That's Steve Malzberg from the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax TV. Catch it on DirecTV 366 and Fios 115. Thank you so much, Steve. And on the other side of the break, we have Austin Graham. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the number one source for political, pop culture, and sports talk on the radio. The Julio Rivera Show. Hashtag ConservARican. With no fuck left to give.
Hi, I'm Adam Marr, Apache helicopter pilot and COO of the Warrior Angels Foundation, a 501c3 with a superior treatment for our veterans suffering with TBI and PTS. We have found a solution that pinpoints and treats the underlying condition and are providing that solution for veterans across the nation, but we need your help. Go to waftbi.org to find out more. That's waftbi.org.
738.
Find the Lanterns Radio Network on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes.
They can intercept this transmission at any time, so I'll be brief. The fight is here. The time is now. Go behind enemy lines.
Player FM, YouTube, and other social media by searching keyword Lanterns Buzz or Lanterns Radio Network.
Politics got you down? Is your team in last place? Is your significant other sleeping with your neighbor? Well, cheer up. The Julio Rivera Show is on. Deal with your problems afterwards.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, hit it!
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Julio Rivera Show is on.
And popping. My name is Julio Rivera on this Thursday, August 18th, 2016. 83 days or something from the presidential election where Hillary Rodham Clinton will be facing off against Donald John Trump. And to a lesser extent, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein and the Constitutional Party guy, which conservatives are trying to force down my throat. And he has absolutely no shot of winning, so I can care less who he is. And we're going to be discussing the two main candidates right now with a man who is family. My family, and this is in my bio, I am a original liberal. I am a reformed Democrat. That's the way I represent myself as. I am a conservative now. I am known as ConservARican. And sometimes it creates issues at family functions. But this man is a principled liberal who I listen to and try to make sense out of his arguments. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter who I could respect for being principled enough to fight against cronyism in the establishment. Although, from an ideological standpoint, I didn't agree with anything that Bernie actually had to say. But this was a major Bernie supporter. He is a liberal commentator, and his name is Austin Graham. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm good, thank you, my man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, now you're a big Hillary opponent. You can't stand her the same way I can't stand her. We've seen a lot of things come out, obviously, via the WikiLeaks. There's a lot of concerns regarding her health based on the way she's carried herself. She hasn't done a lot of press conferences. She's limited her public appearances. Let me ask you a question, right? Based on the fact that she's going to run our country, if she wins, do you think that the American people have the right to her making a statement regarding her medical records or releasing her medical records so we know that she's capable of doing the job for potentially 8 years?
Well, in every circumstance, I don't know if necessarily releasing your medical records should be required, but as of like what we've found out already, a lot of her problems are neurological, and that is very scary. She doesn't even realize when she's lying. She loses focus. She makes harsh decisions just because, I don't know, she loses her mental capability to make decisions sometimes when she has like these episodes or when she becomes panicked or something like that.
Okay, well, recently when she was interviewed, she showed what was referred to by many medical experts as a seizure-like tic when she was confronted by several reporters in close quarters. Which I was on television last week, and I actually tried to replay it with a cup. And it was actually very bothersome because there was another angle shown of the reporters as they were questioning her, and they actually had a shocked face as far as the way that she actually responded to it. Now, between being helped up the stairs, between having several concussions, do you think at this point, let me ask you a question, because Republicans are talking about, putting Pence on the ticket. Would you have a problem with her being removed off of the ticket and being replaced, perhaps, with Kane? Or how would you feel about that as a Democrat?
Well, I could be wrong on this, but if I have the rules right, since Bernie declared his delegates to be how they are, and he didn't necessarily, he withheld the convention, he kept the number of delegates and stopped the contested convention. And if he didn't do that, I think she would have just gotten all of his delegates outright. But I think now that he still has some delegates, that he should be the replacement if for some reason she were to drop out. If the DNC didn't decide to do that and didn't decide to play by the rules, I wouldn't be surprised. But from what I know, I think as the rule stands, Bernie is supposed to be the replacement.
All right, so he's the next in line. Let me ask you a question, because I am diametrically opposed to Bernie Sanders. I thought that the election this year would have been perfect if it had been, and even if we lost, it would have been the best representation of where Americans want to take the country had it been Bernie Sanders, because he's a deep ideologue, versus Cruz, who's a deep ideologue. And you were a Bernie guy, I'm a Cruz guy. You have not become a Hillary person because she's a criminal. I've become a Trump person because I want to stop Hillary. But let's just leave it at that. Why do you actually, let me ask you a question, and you're young. Tell the audience how old you are.
19.
All right, you're 19, but you're very politically active. You have a lot of heart. You have the heart of an activist, which is where I find myself at, twice your age. What is it about Bernie Sanders that you find especially enticing?
Oh, I mean, I could write a book about that, but I don't know. It's kind of, he's had the same exact opinions for 40 years. He's always fought for the rights of the less fortunate, an uncommon thing for a liberal, an unidentified thing as a liberal. He's always been great for veterans. He's on the Veterans Affairs Committee, as the head of it, actually. I don't know, man.
He's pro-Second Amendment, right? Is he not pro-Second Amendment?
No, he is. I mean, he has a D- rating by the NRA, but Democrats try to slam him as being too pro-gun. So, I mean, either way you take it, I guess he has somewhat of a fair stance on guns.
Okay, because I've been trying to make sense out of the Bernie phenomenon, and I know that a lot of it amounts to, a lot of young people don't understand the way that the system actually works. Because I'm a business owner and I pay, unfortunately, taxes, and trying to get things off of the ground, it makes it more difficult. Bernie Sanders has actually scared off a lot of people that want the American dream, because the American dream is built on being limitless, being as successful as you could possibly be because of your ingenuity, because of your intelligence, because of your, I guess, your strategy or whatever you want to call it. Do you think that progressive taxation is a good thing?
I don't know. I think it's kind of a myth that the free market system can't exist under democratic socialism. We hear that socialism word, it's a scary word, and socialism means a completely different thing than democratic socialism. Right now we have a capitalistic socialism system where tax breaks go to the rich people and the corporations, and instead of the people that kind of need it the most. I don't think taxation is a big problem as long as the people that are supposed to be paying taxes actually pay them, and I think that was a huge point in his campaign, to actually make the 1% who hide their money overseas to actually get them to pay their taxes, because they account for so much of the money in our country.
Okay, now do you identify as a Democrat?
I did before this election. I'm now registered as an independent.
Okay, wow. You know what? I'm very proud of you. That's actually a smart thing, because the next thing that I was going to delve into was Hillary Clinton is the architect of this horrific foreign policy that we're dealing with right now. And some people from the social justice angle will try to manipulate you into thinking that the idea of vetting refugees, the idea of a closed border, the idea of American sovereignty is a xenophobic concept. Now, if you're going to run a tight democratic socialist ship, let's say that your guy won and you were going to do that, how could you do that with open borders and make it effective?
Well, I don't know if those policies necessarily overlap. Like, somebody could be tighter on immigration and still have necessarily a more socialistic idea on taxes. I'm not sure what you mean by that question.
Well, what I'm saying is, all right, let's say we're right now, we have an open spigot. We have an open border. People can come into our country, right? Liberals, and I'm assuming that you're somewhat liberal, obviously, will say that Americans should just let people come in here, that people, migrate from area to area, and that's part of the way that the world has been built. But we have a system of taxation. We have a closed system where people are paying into it and are expected to pick up the people that can't afford to live in our system. But we're, I guess if you want to call it, what would you say? We are, I guess, I don't know. We're good people. We're the type of people that'll take care of people that have less and whatnot. You have to, at a certain point, close it off, or the entire world will come here. Every other country in the world has a closed border. Why can't the United States, that's $19 trillion in debt, have a closed border?
Right, so you're saying if we are welcoming refugees and we can't support the refugees, or the refugees can't support themselves, then they shouldn't be coming here.
Exactly, not to mention the fact that we can't properly vet them. Listen, James Comey, who I have a serious issue with, based on the fact that he did not, even though he was referred by 3 different government agencies to go ahead and open up an investigation on Hillary Clinton, he refused to do so. But James Comey himself said that we cannot allow refugees into this country because there's no possible way that we can vet them based on circumstances. Hillary Clinton wants to allow 65,000 Syrian refugees, and they may not even be Syrian because they're displaced from other regions within the Middle East. Why would anyone in their right mind vote for Hillary Clinton? And let me ask you a question to double it. Who are you voting for?
Well, one, I don't know who. There's a few questions, I guess. One, I don't know who the hell would ever vote for Hillary Clinton. 2, the immigration thing, especially in terms of the Middle East and Syria, I don't know how many we can or should accept, and if we do, I think obviously the screenings need to be 10 times harder than usual because, we don't want anybody slipping through the cracks that could be dangerous. And I think it's been proven before that a few have slipped through the cracks, and then there's been issues. So that's definitely something to watch out for. But I am going to be voting for Jill Stein. If Gary Johnson was anti-TPP, then he might have my vote. But Jill Stein is pretty much the exact same person as Bernie Sanders, minus the 30 years experience in the Senate.
Yeah, you know what? I actually looked at her website, and I was just as frightened as listening to, Bernie when he speaks. But she seems to be a believer and an ideologue, so I could see why people would gravitate around her if they believe in those things. But the fact of the matter remains, Austin, as you get older, as you grow, as you make more money, as you become more successful, do you really believe that the general population has a right to what you've earned yourself directly? Do you feel that you're happy to go ahead and give that towards a system that is manipulated by legislators and a bureaucracy that you have no control over?
Am I happy to give something extra that I have to somebody in need? Yes, absolutely.
But privately, though, if you want to go ahead and give it...
I mean, of course I don't support that. Like, I support using, like, social programs for things that only need that. I don't like making politicians paychecks any deeper because they get a pay raise every however many years. They might be every year.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, and I'm all in favor for, like, if you're on unemployment, I think you should be drug tested. Like, I don't like people abusing the system. I think it should be harsh, and you shouldn't be able to abuse the system, and I don't think right now we're very good at that.
Well, you know what? That's a very conservative viewpoint. And you know what? Over the course of time, I'm going to keep on having you on, and I'm going to keep on trying to bring you over to our side, and I may fail.
Bring me to the dark side.
It's not the dark side, brother. You gotta start. You gotta open your mind and start thinking about it. And
I'm open to the opposition.
Well, we'll see where it goes. But Austin Graham, thank you so much for being on. I love you, brother. Thank you for being here. And on the other side, we have famed economist Steve Beaman. Don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the number one source for political, pop culture, and sports talk on the radio. The Julio Rivera Show. Hashtag ConservARican. With no fuck left to give.
Find the Lanterns Radio Network on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes.
They can intercept this transmission at any time, so I'll be brief. The fight is here. The time is now. Go behind enemy lines.
Player FM, YouTube, and other social media by searching keyword Lanterns Buzz or Lanterns Radio Network.
Yeah, you're right here.
Politics got you down? Is your team in last place? Is your significant other sleeping with your neighbor? Well, cheer up. The Julio Rivera Show is on. Deal with your problems afterwards.
Give me 1 minute.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, hit it!
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Julio Rivera Show is on.
And popping. No producer, no engineer. The most low-budget show on radio. It's Julio Rivera, and we're here for the last segment, and we're here talking about a serious issue, the economy. We have liberals that, based on false social narratives, continue to vote Democrat when the most important issue is your pocket. And we are blessed to be here this evening with a gentleman that is knowledgeable in these issues, and his name is Steve Beaman. How are you tonight, Steve?
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm doing just great. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Listen, Trump gave a speech 10 days ago regarding economical issues. He brought up taxation. He brought up deregulation. He brought up a lot of things that are reminiscent to the 1980s when Ronald Reagan revitalized our economy. Let me ask you a question. Based on what you've heard, and people constantly hit Trump for a lack of details, for maybe sometimes changing in real time, but the main points that you heard in that speech, what do you think economically we're looking at should Mr. Trump win the presidency?
Well, you're asking what I think is the salient question of this campaign, and that is this. We've got two candidates. Most of us would agree come with, all kinds of bad things. Okay, fine, I get it. But it comes down to the economics of this, and if you want to have a job and have our economy growing, what do we look for and how do we achieve it? We have been in an anemic growth rate of 2.5% for the last many, many years. It's no wonder Americans are upset. So let's take a look real quick. What Trump has proposed is a reduction in corporate taxes from 35%, which is the highest in the OECD countries, down to 15% across the board. He's proposed both simplifying and cutting personal income taxes to 3 brackets with a top of 25%. And he's talked about putting a complete hiatus on regulation and stopping that.
Okay, but a hiatus on regulation, what does that do for the tens of thousands of laws that have been written?
That is the key, because by really putting a moratorium on new regulations and beginning to work to cut those back, it is a significant boom to the economy and a nice chance to give a stimulus to this that we haven't seen in a number of years.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. Right now, under the system that we're with, you have states that require licensure, they require bonding, they require a lot of different things. Is there anything in what you've heard from Mr. Trump, not just to create a moratorium, but to somehow cut back or listen, one thing that, and I was a Senator Cruz guy, one thing that he wanted to do was he wanted to do away with certain federal bureaucracies. Let's talk about the EPA, for instance. One of the things that we need to do as a country, I feel, is to come back behind an energy revolution. An energy revolution is stymied by the EPA. So what do you think Donald Trump, if you were, let's say you're playing quarterback and you're an advisor and you're saying, what are we going to do about the EPA? What would you do right now between the Keystone Pipeline, giving states the right to dig coal and all of those things? How would you bring back the economy?
Well, first, we need to recognize that, like it or not, we are an economy based on fossil fuel oils. And so we would absolutely, in no uncertain terms, have to open up the coal industry in West Virginia and those areas. We have to establish the Keystone Pipeline to move that oil, and we'd have to continue to allow, the fracking that's done and get that onto public lands. We are currently the world leader in all kinds of energy situations. We just need to lead that.
Okay, and Donald Trump as a builder, do you think that the Keystone Pipeline project would be something that he would salivate over and want to actually dig his heels into?
I think he'd be more likely to. We have to understand that under the Obama administration, the biggest opponent to the Keystone Pipeline was Warren Buffett, and Warren made a couple of $1 billion because of the turning down the pipeline. I think Trump would be in a position, which is one of the reasons Buffett opposes him, to maybe rescind that and go forward with it. So we are already capable of being energy independent, and I believe the policies that are being promoted by him would do so. Okay,
what can we do, do you think, psychologically? because at the end of the day, there's a certain segment of the population that believes that any type of natural resource mining is detrimental to the environment. And what do we do to kind of break that mentality so that we can create jobs? Listen, in Pennsylvania, in Indiana, and West Virginia, we should be digging coal. That was actually one of the rallying cries, Trump digs coal. So why can't we do that based on what the media is perpetuating as a false narrative?
Well, I think we absolutely need to. And I think folks on the environmental side need to realize that we are still in an economic era where we need this stuff. You cannot sacrifice people's jobs en masse to try to achieve some, theoretical objective in the environmental area. We are moving toward cleaner fuels all the time. We're moving toward cleaner coal. We're moving toward natural gas applications. We need to move on all fronts toward energy independence sustainably. And yes, we want wind power, we want solar, but those today aren't economically feasible. So we need to continue that research, work toward that, which everyone wants that outcome, but in the same time, not currently and in today's world, harm these hardworking people in Pennsylvania and West Virginia.
How much do you think that the government is affecting this so-called pseudoscience that is scaring people, that is making people think that we're destroying the environment for the next generation, that they don't actually have a grasp on the way that actually things work? But how much do you think that the government is involved in creating that mentality?
Well, one of the things we need to look at with regard to that is that government is the funding vehicle behind almost all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so when the academics put out their research studies, they are paid for by the very government whose positions they're paid to uphold. So there can indeed be a bias to the research, and we need to be very careful. Now, that's true on the other side, too. Corporate interests put out their own research, so we as citizens need to balance those out intellectually and just make a decision on which side we think has the more credible evidence. I do think at any point in time you could go to in some cases to a more environmental concern, but in many of these cases you'd come down on the side of going ahead and letting the economic realities play out.
Okay, and with the advances, like we've seen the price of our gas at the pump go down due to the advances in fracking. And it wasn't like we've been fracking in more areas because a lot of those areas have been restricted. So we've gotten smarter as a country mining those natural resources. And that actually speaks to what you're saying. There's a balance between should we take those risks and whether they're worth it or whether they're dangerous. But I think at this point with where we are, I guess technology-wise, we can continue to try to bring down the cost of everything because the cost of energy brings down the cost of anything, no?
Absolutely it does. It has one of the biggest multiplier effects in the economy because everything ships on some vehicle that's transported by energy, whether it's coal, or I should say oil or gas. And the fact is we need these industries to be solid. Yes, we want low oil prices, but we need a stable industry. Not just does it do the transportation, but it also creates healthy jobs. So across the board, we want to sustain a healthy energy sector. Obviously, we've seen the government's involvement in the insurance sector with the disaster that the Affordable Care Act has become, with Aetna now pulling out of it. We don't want to see that kind of limiting factor done to the energy sector as well. And I think we need to be careful. These are financial and economic issues, not political. And I hope people will look beyond the politics to the economics of them.
Okay, yeah, the economics of everything winds up being actually the bottom line. And we're in very dangerous times because we have a very strong liberal special interest is continually funding, new energy, which I don't have a problem with. I think new energy is a good idea as long as it's profitable. But right now, when we're $19 trillion in debt, when everything costs exponentially more than it should based on the energy cost. What do you think a Donald Trump presidency should do in regards to taking American resources, our own domestic resources, our own land, and Barack Obama has purchased up through his federal government a lot of this land. What should we do with this now?
Well, clearly we need to, I think, reprivatize some federal lands. I'm not sure, and I have some constitutional issues, although I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I think there's possibly some issues there, but the reality is we need to continue to open up federal lands for drilling. There is no hard evidence that it harms the land, number one. And number two, we are, as we've said on the show, we're basically energy independent if we handle this stuff right, and that's good for American security as well as the American economy. I think Trump is more likely to do that. We can't guarantee what he would be like because we don't know, but we certainly can philosophically say he's more down that line than his opponent.
Okay, well, let's take it back to checks and balances. You just said whether or not Trump would be that way. We're electing, and I said this earlier with Steve, we're electing a president. We're not electing a king. Do you think that lobbyists in Washington are going to have more of an effect on this as far as the way these bills are written than the actual president?
I think it's going to be a combination. We have to recognize that the president has inherently limited power to make law, of course, but through the presidential orders area where he can come in and make executive orders, he has a great deal of power, and I think Trump can unwind a lot of the legislative or the regulatory laws that Obama's put in place, and I think he'll do that overnight. I think that'll be one of the first things he does. So he'll have to work with Congress to pass laws that change these things, but the executive orders he can effect immediately. And I think his leaning will be toward deregulation and lower taxes.
So even though we have a lot of doomsdayism from the left regarding deregulation, and even though they will scare us into thinking that lowering taxes is a bad thing, what would you say as far as, because let me ask you a question. First of all, do you believe the 5% unemployment number today?
Well, I believe that as it's calculated, that's a right number. The question is, should we calculate it that way? We have different unemployment numbers to calculate different things. Is that 5% the most accurate of those various calculations? I don't think so. I think we're more at a 10 to 15% unemployment rate. And if you look into the minority communities in the inner cities, we're at more like 25% or more.
Okay, so Democrats who pander constantly to minorities like myself, I'm a Puerto Rican from the inner city, and Barack Obama is the first black president from Chicago by way of Nigeria or wherever he's from. Why should we believe right now that voting Democrat is better when minorities have suffered, when the food stamp, the welfare, the Section 8 numbers have only grown exponentially, when the average take-home pay has gone down since President Bush? Why should anyone, give me an argument, and you might not even have one because I certainly don't, why should anyone vote for Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think the argument for her comes down to keeping the status quo. If you're living on public subsidies through either the Section 8 programs or the S-CHIP programs or any of the SNAP programs, you need those benefits. And I actually understand why people would say, I cannot live without them. I need those benefits. Now, in the long run, they're hurting themselves. They're not helping themselves. That's why we have institutional poverty today. But, in the near term, you can certainly understand their argument.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I've always, when I grew up, I used to hear minorities saying, we're a victim of a system that is, against us and all of these things. And, to a certain extent, I believe that. But the system was not set up by the people that they believe, or was set up by the people that they believe in, as opposed to the people that they should be voting for. they have a hatred towards conservative policy when conservative policy is the one thing that will actually break them out of that. Wouldn't you agree?
I completely agree. I think the unintended consequences of these social welfare programs has been that we have further victimized people by, first, we tell them you're a victim, you can't survive in this society as a free person. Secondly, we go in and say, but, you also don't want to be married. We want to break up your family and we'll pay you more. And third, the more children you have, the more money you'll make. So we end up with single-parent households going through the roof, multi-family houses going through the roof, and a culture that says I'm a victim, I'm entitled to money, why should I work? And again, in Chicago we have, 50, 60 people a weekend shot. In Milwaukee, you've got complete meltdown going on. In Baltimore. And I think we're seeing a lot of this just because of these policies now coming home to roost.
Exactly, because the anger that they feel, they go ahead and take against that same very system that has created the situation. Listen, Steve, thank you so much for coming on. You're a part of an organization regarding education. Why don't you give us some information on that so our viewers can go ahead and, maybe contribute?
Absolutely. As part of what I think of as a positive solution to our nation's problems, I created the Society to Advance Financial Education, which is a 501c3 organization designed to promote and provide financial literacy to all people. My belief is that through the appropriate education as a tool, more and more people can become wealthy in this society, and that, frankly, is the solution we need, is for people to become, once again, independent of government benefits and able to survive on their own resources.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was Steve Beaman. God bless, and thank you for being on tonight. We hope to have you on again.
I'm happy to do it.
Well, you know what? That's all I'm about, man. So it's so great to meet you, and God bless, and have a good night, man.
Thank you, and blessings to you, my friend. Godspeed.
All right. Well, you heard it from Steve Beaman. He's an economic expert. I don't know a damn thing. He does. And he told you exactly what I believe. You heard it from Steve Malzberg. You didn't quite hear it from Austin Graham because we're still pulling him over to our side, which he may come over to or not. I don't know. Some people are just destined to be liberals, but this is the Julio Rivera show. And I want to say one thing, because today I felt kind of bad. I put a post up about Ben Shapiro, who I've always been a big fan of. And I don't like the anti-Trumpism from anyone. I really don't. I see it as opportunistic. I see it as you're dipping into an audience that just wants to fucking stop Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't have a bigger opponent than Julio Rivera. You can go back to the night of the Indiana primary. I was on TV with Roger Stone, who Steve Malzberg referenced earlier, hitting Donald Trump, bashing him over the fucking head. But you know what? We lost. And Donald Trump wasn't my last choice. I actually agree with a lot that, Mr. Trump, as Scotty Nell Hughes would say. I agree with a lot of it. It's a lot better than what we're going to get with Hillary Clinton. I don't want illegals voting in 2020. We're going to lose our republic. We're going to become a socialist South American nation. Stop it now! Vote Trump! My name is Julio Rivera. God bless. And have a wonderful evening.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, hit it!
We are controlling transmission.
Ladies and gentlemen.